Hey, what's up, Chad?
Yo, sorry, still getting set up. How's it going, Kyle?
Yo, not too bad, man. How you doing?
Good, good. Is Thoreau coming with us here, or is he not making it today?
No, I believe he's out today.
All right, we'll have to do without him. Another boring week in THORChain land.
Yep. Another boring week? I don't think there's ever been a boring week.
Wouldn't be THORChain if there wasn't something going on every week.
Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy because there's like, comparatively, there's so few people like working on this stuff, but there's always like so much stuff that's actually going on. And this is just like the core stuff, not even talking about the other like ecosystem projects it's always something going on.
Yeah. This team is very small. I don't think people know how tiny the dev team is, especially compared to other projects. Like, I mean, I know projects that have, people in the hundreds, which is like crazy to think, but it does happen. But we try to stay a small, focused, streamlined, hire people who are of high value and not try to get into the place of middle management. I think we've always kind of said that like if the time ever comes where we looking at middle management, then something's wrong. We've lost our way.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good having a small team because you don't have that layer where things just kind of get stuck, and the top isn't really communicating to the bottom. They have to go through that middle person, right? And that's kind of what creates the inefficiency that just it really slows down the whole process, and doesn't let us move it at the speed that that we can, and with the efficiency that we do.
Yeah, we've always been fans of like the fast pace, especially in the early days. It's coming less and less true with time as more and more people are getting involved and the project's getting larger in terms of like the community's getting larger and there's more voices being heard and that kind of stuff. So it just naturally slows things down from a dev perspective, but that's the way decentralization works. The more decentralized something gets, basically the slower it gets as well, because you don't have this overarching CEO that's kind of telling everybody what to do and when to do it and how to do it, and there's no discussion.
Well, I guess speaking of that, we can start with the next chain vote, which just ended last night, I believe, and it looks like. I think Binance Smart Chain had the most votes, and then Haven obviously received a ton of votes as well. So, what's your takeaways from this whole next vote thing?
I mean, to me, I was a bit surprised just because it felt more dramatic than I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? Like people started to vote, and like Haven was winning, and then it was like even for a while. Then like one night, all of a sudden, like Haven pulled away a bunch of votes. And it seemed like for a while that Haven was gonna, had this thing in the bag, and then all of a sudden, overnight, it just woke up one morning and I'm like, oh crap, look at this, like a huge shift in the community towards Binance Smart Chain. So it was quite kind of dramatic in some ways, but I love to see the community getting involved and voting and voicing their perspectives and that kind of stuff. So overall, I was really happy with it.
Yeah, you're right. It does bring a lot of like. I don't want to call it drama, but it's in the same wheelhouse, like if it's not drama, it's drama's cousin. Like it's it just makes things a little bit more like politicized. I get, because everyone's got like their own stance and opinion on these things. Obviously, everyone wants to go their own.
The community did a good job in general, like of not getting vicious, right, and not getting like yelling at other people and being quite negative. I think people had really like positive and productive conversations, and for the most part, in the chats and whatever about the pros and the cons and merits, the issues with either or chains. So what's going to be fascinating for me, I think, is like once we move forward after these two, which got a significant amount of support from the community, then what's going to be next? Is everybody just going to jump into Dash, or are these people who voted for Binance Smart Chain or Haven going to vote for Monero, or like, who knows? It's going to be kind of exciting to see what the next step is from the community perspective.
Yeah. So like speaking about the results just a little bit more. So Binance Smart Chain won, but also the core team is volunteering to work on the Haven client, or where they're working with the Haven team. Do you want to just like say what the core team is doing with with the Haven team right now?
Yeah, yeah.
And if they're working on Haven?
Yeah, I mean, the core team has been working with Haven for a very long period of time, for like a year and a half or something like this. So there's nothing really quite new about it. We've always kind of supported them and encouraged it. So we're just spending more time this past week and this current week to kind of dedicate more energy towards them and just assisting them to get them across the finish line. At the same time, I think Nine Realms is going to be started working on the Binance Smart Chain integration, which is in their wheelhouse because they just did AVAX, and AVAX is a fork of Ethereum, and Binance Smart Chain is a fork of Ethereum. So, well, AVAX is not a fork of Ethereum, but the code is going to be a fork of the Ethereum implementation. And so it's already in their wheelhouse. They've already done it once before recently, and so that those muscles are already stretched and ready to go. So I think it's actually going to be quite an efficient use of time in the end. But at the same time, like both of these things are heading towards StageNet, both Binance Smart Chain and Haven. But the decision of whether or not Haven or Binance Smart Chain goes to mainnet is a different topic and a different vote that's going to happen, downstream. So once we get those chains added, and whenever we feel like they've been vetted enough and had enough, time to confirm their reliability, security, and resiliency, then it will put up to a vote, and people will vote, yes or no on Haven, yes or no on Binance Smart Chain, and that will require a 2/3 majority vote in order for it to pass. So if Haven doesn't get 2/3 majority, then privacy doesn't get added for Haven, right? And if it doesn't happen for Binance Smart Chain, then it doesn't happen there either. So in the end, the vast majority of the network or the community has to agree to add a chain before it gets actually added.
Right, and there's many months I would think before something like that would happen, where the final decision needs to be made by the nodes, whether to say yes, we're taking it, or like, no, that's a veto. So like there's many months to go before these implementations are ready. And also, I'm just like speaking on behalf of Nine Realms. Like adding new chains is all well and good, but we're still primarily focusing on just the protocol and just cleaning things up, and we have other features and things that we want to get out there. And test. And obviously there's a lot of priorities. So like adding a new chain isn't always on the top of the priority list. So I do have a question for you about like how do you think that, like, obviously we can't keep adding new chains forever. So how do you think we find out, like, how do you think the community determines that it's done adding new chains? We've covered enough volume and we have enough basically to ossify new chains being added to the network.
Yeah, that's interesting and kind of a complex question. The node operators have to do an analysis, and it's primarily two things. One is the security of adding a new chain. So, if we were to add, for example, Binance Smart Chain kind of like this because it's a highly centralized chain. All the nodes are run in CZ's basement, right? And so the question becomes, do we want to expose ourselves to a centralized entity, being CZ or more accurately Binance? That's a debate that the community can have, and whether or not we do or do not, and the risks that come involved with that concept. That's the first part, is thinking about the security implications. What are the risks here? Older chains are more stable, and they generally pose less of a risk than newer chains. Newer chains can be quite nimble and still making large changes to the protocol and can create issues for us downstream. So that's another thing to be considerate of in terms of security and those kind of things. And the other thing I have to think about is just the economics of it, because as a node operator, you have to run these new chains. And that comes at a cost to node operators if they spin up more resources and infrastructure to support that new chain. And so they have to make a calculus of, is it worth the money that I'm spending every month to support this new chain, whether it be Haven or Binance Smart Chain or whatever? Is the additional value to the Rune asset and the value to the trade volume and TVL and all these things, is that worthwhile? Right. And that's a debate that each individual person can come down on one side or the other. And everybody can kind of debate about that concept and what makes the most sense for the community. It's a hard thing to do. It's kind of like licking your finger, sticking it up in the wind. Some are going to be more expensive than others. Like Solana would be very expensive because it's a very intense requirements and infrastructure. But a chain like, Haven is relatively cheap because it's, It's like a simple fork of a UTXO, so the demands on the for resources are quite relatively small, and so that all comes into the calculus, right? The other thing to worry about too is that be considerate of is we only have so much security on this network, right? We only have so much bond, so much capital that can be stored by this network, some dollar figure. And so how much do we want to splinter that capital, right? Like if we add 1,000 chains, well, then how deep can the Bitcoin pool really get, right? If you have 1,000 different chains, so to speak. And so that becomes kind of the debate too of like, do we want to utilize kind of precious security space in the pools for some new chain that, maybe not offer a whole lot of value or importance, right? And you can make that argument for Haven because it's relatively a small chain. It's not going to be adding, it's not going to take up much space in terms of security, but the question becomes like, is it worth the energy, right? And that's also a debatable topic.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables there, and I think. Do you think that we would know if it's too many chains before the integration happened, or do you think it would be more like we integrate something and it's like, well, that maybe we didn't actually need that, and we just kind of spent a whole bunch of time putting it, say we're up to like 25 chains like a year or two from now, right? Like, is it going to happen once something's added and then like, oh man, that was like, this is probably the limit right here. Like that one was too much.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more likely going to happen after the fact. Like the Rune price is directly relational to this question, right? Because if Rune goes down to 50 cents, let's just say, right? That means that nodes are probably basically earning at least, 4x less yield than they're earning today, which basically means that the cost of running an AWS node is more expensive than the yield that they're earning, right? And that becomes obviously a problem at that point. Then you can start having the conversation at that point of like, okay, we're running too hot here. We're not making profit here. So as node operators, we want to remove X, Y, and Z chains or something of this nature. That could totally happen one day. I don't think that's going to be a problem in the long term, though, just because if Rune is what I hope it to be, and it becomes a widely used DEX between chains, then the Rune price will eventually hit some sort of value that it'll never go below some number, much larger number than it is. I don't want to say numbers now because I don't want to price hypothecate or anything like this. But at some point, once the price hits a certain number, then the cost of the node operators to run this infrastructure is so small relative that it is probably not even a part of the conversation anymore. Just because, they'll in my view, there'll be a day when the node operators are going to be earning, millions of dollars per month, in the future. That's years away, of course. But if that was the case, then whether or not you're spending an extra $3,000 to run a Solana node or not, who gives a shit at that point, right? It's such an insignificant number relative to what the income is being made. The issue now is that because Rune is still relatively a young coin and a young network, and we're in a bear market where the Rune's price is around $2, we're kind of more that number is more makes sense to talk about today. But I don't think people will care about it, in 5 years or so.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially like you're talking about running a Solana node. Like right now, everyone's like, oh, it's really expensive. But if node operators are making, 5 times as much as they did today, it's a no-brainer to put Solana on there and up that a little bit more. You up the cost, but you're also just, completely changing the whole dynamics of the network just based on like how much volume there's going to be and a whole new set of users and all those types of things. So that's a really good point. Just that the price of Rune is actually a factor when it comes to the economics of adding a new chain or not. Yeah,
it's the price of Rune, but also the trade volume too. How much yield the network itself is making. And during a bull market, you'll see a lot more trade volume just naturally. And during a bear market, you're going to see a lot less trade volume just because of those macro things happening. And so, nodes will make, crazy bank amount of money, into the future, probably in the next bull market, in my opinion, at least. And which is not financial advice, by the way, or legal advice or any of the things. But yeah, it's an issue we should talk about these days, but I don't think people will talk about it much after this bear market.
Sweet. So that leads us into the next chain, which is AVAX. And it looks like the rollout is probably going to start for AVAX probably start next week. And if you haven't been here for one of these new chain rollouts, they do take a little bit of time just because of all the things that need to happen to get the new chain on live. But I don't believe the validators started running that the AVAX chain, daemons, the nodes for AVAX, are they? I haven't seen anything like that. Hello?
Sorry, I got a phone call and I cut everything out for me. Can you say it again? You hear me?
Is this thing working?
Cal, can you hear me? Okay.
Oh, we're getting rugged. All right, let's get Chad back up here. Oh, he's gone. Hey, there we go. We got rugged for a minute there.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry about that. I got a phone call which just broke fucking everything apparently.
Yeah, I know.
Technology. Sorry, can you ask your question again?
It's just talking about the AVAX rollout. So right now our nodes aren't currently running the AVAX daemon. They aren't running the AVAX chain currently and observing new blocks. I haven't seen any announcements for that.
I'm trying to think. I think it might have gone out in 95.1, but let me check if my computer would actually do things for me. Let's see here.
Oh no, it looks like there is an avalanche daemon. Well, either way, there's a bunch of things that need to happen for the new chain to go live, including all the nodes spinning up an avalanche daemon and setting trading to a certain value to make sure that trades can't be started before the vault is generated, and then a churn needs to happen to generate an Asgard vault for AVAX, and then it's pretty much ready to go. All of the a vote needs to happen to a switch needs to be flipped, and then AVAX is live on THORChain. We can start with the rollout there. People can add liquidity, make swaps, use the DEX aggregator, which is going to roll out with the chain integration. So that process is going to start next week, it looks like.
Yeah, I think probably by the end of the week, next week, we'll have AVAX live and running on mainnet, most likely, assuming that I think did we already vote on that one? I think we already voted on that one.
Yeah, right? That one's already voted.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I was talking to, I think it was Pluto, or I can't remember if it was Pluto or Iridanis, I think it was Pluto, and about changing the process of which new chains are kind of enabled, like on the chain, and get to be a lot less hands off from a mere admin perspective. And I think what's going to happen is, and I'm not 100% sure about this, is that on the next churn, again, I have to check with Pluto on this, but I think on the next churn, it'll just go ahead and create an address, and then it'll just be live. And we have to wait for the nodes to build their AVAX daemons and kind of sync up to the tip. But once that happens, once you have a 2/3 majority that syncs to the tip, then theoretically, everything is live, and you can now start adding liquidity and trading and doing all those things.
Sweet. And aggregator. So swap in, swap out ARC20 tokens to like pretty much anything, including ERC20 tokens. So that really, really exciting, just being able to skip the AVAX bridge there and just go straight cross chain. And there was a really cool tweet from one of the THORSwap devs this week. It's the first transaction of its kind. I'm fairly sure. Just going from an ARC20 token on AVAX on THORChain StageNet to a Uniswap ERC20 token. I think they went to Thor, so that they went from ARC20, long tail asset on AVAX chain to ERC20 on Ethereum, yeah, which is like super cool. And one transaction, one signing, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it should be, right? Like, there's no need to overcomplicate things and make it difficult on users to be able to transact and do what they're trying to accomplish. And things are very complicated and very complex in the background, and it takes a lot of time and energy and effort to get those things working. But there's no necessity for the end user to understand what's all the things that's happening, right? Including needing to make several transactions to get the asset they're trying to acquire. So this is part of this is the ideology of this is how crypto should be easy, right? And it's not in many ways today, but it should be easy. I think this is just one step in that direction.
I've also been learning a lot about different types of wrapped assets, or different types of assets and wrapped assets on Avalanche C chain. I've been doing some research on this. So let me just share what I learned this week about specifically like USDC. So like if you looked at like I haven't really used Avalanche that much, so like I'm familiar with it, but I haven't used it that much. So just looking into this, there's like USDC.E and then there's just USDC. And so both of them are like this USDC stablecoin, right? USDCE, there's little dot E at the end of it. It's they're both on the Avalanche. They're both ARC20 coins, right? But the dot E is just wrapped ERC20 Circle. Like it can't be redeemed directly through Circle, but it's wrapped on the AVAX bridge. Yeah. But Circle also issues a USDC coin directly on Avalanche, which can be directly redeemed with their own services, right? So like there's different types of like basically like the same coin, like a wrapped version, and then like you could like the quote unquote the real version, which is actually just directly redeemable 1-to-1 for dollars through the centralized company Circle. So it's like very interesting seeing that there's like one asset, two different types of the same asset, right. But like one has this extra custodial risk of being on a bridge, and then like you have to unwrap it and then redeem it through Circle, or you could just have the actual asset and then just give it to the company to redeem it. So
yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not an AVAX expert by any stretch of imagination, but I think what that's happening there is that there's multiple different types of chains within AVAX. There's like a C chain, other types of chains.
Yep.
And so Circle operates on one of those chains, and then to get that asset on another chain, they have to do like a wrap thing within AVAX, which, more power to them if they want to run things that way.
Yeah, it was interesting to me seeing that there's like different, basically different like issuances of the same USDC token. Like one like kind of unofficially issued by their bridge, and then one like officially, quote unquote, issued by the company that issues the token itself, which is like, it's just interesting way of doing things, and just like it's something I wanted to point out, especially when it comes to we talk a lot about wrapped assets and the custodial risk that a wrapped asset has, because obviously you need the collateral that's on a bridge in order to back that wrapped asset. So I was like kind of diving into that to see like what the different what the difference is between all these tokens, and it came across that like interesting little thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like if there's people that like know a lot about Avalanche, or especially people that run like Avalanche Spaces or whatever, we should definitely get them up here sometime and just learn a little bit from the Avalanche community. Like I'm sure there's people in the Avalanche space that do these kinds of Twitter spaces all the time.
Yeah, it would be good to organize one next week with the AVAX like people, right? Of getting a spaces together where we can talk to both communities.
Yeah, man, looking forward to that. So if anyone knows anybody, definitely send them our way.
Yeah. That'd be good. If anyone knows any influencers or smart people within the AVAX community, let us know, and we'll reach out to them and try to organize a space with them and kind of talk things out.
Cool. All right, what else we got? Single-sided yield are all of those PRs merged to mainnet now, and we're going to start testing those things on StageNet for single-sided yields.
Yep. I think, to my knowledge, Nine Realms is going to start vetting and verifying all that code, make sure it works as expected. They're meeting up. They're doing an all-hands meeting next week, and I think that's part of on the docket of that meeting is of that kind of a 2-day kind of all-hands thing to kind of go through and document what they're test and how they're going to test it and the whole plan and all that kind of stuff. Once they feel good and confident about those things, they'll make a recommendation to the community saying, we feel this thing is ready. We've tested it, verified it. The community is open and available to test it and verify it themselves individually. And we feel we've solved all the bugs or whatever it might be. And then it goes up to our vote for the community on the node operators to vote on enabling this feature, which will probably be limited in the beginning of it would only deploy X amount of rune into the POL, which will limit the amount of synths that can be used for single-sided yield. And then we'll kind of, similar to how we did raise the caps before, we'll just kind of start small, start targeted, make sure everything's working good in mainnet and production. And then as we feel more confident and comfortable with it, we can start kind of increasing that limit and eventually just take the limit off entirely.
Sweet. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And it's going to be a process to get everything tested and everything like that. So we're going to come up with a plan next week and then get started on that. And like, obviously, like that's one of our biggest priorities is just getting single-sided yield out there, because that is just such a huge product for THORChain, obviously, and really going to change the game there. Just increasing like what's available in this entire space. Single-sided yields is the holy grail, and we want to get that out like as soon as possible once we know it's safe. So that's like pretty much one of the highest possible priorities here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to somebody this week, and somebody who's a very well-known and famous person in the industry, and I probably should not name him who that person is, but they were very excited about this whole single-sided yield, and they were talking to me about creating a service to wrap this one thing, like just trying to create a new product for themselves and for their people and whatever, their circles, to wrap this thing and create a separate product that just this empowers that, which would be huge because that person, has a lot of connections and it's well known, well respected in the not only just THORChain community, but in the general cryptocurrency community, especially in the Bitcoin community. And so like that would be huge. That would just drive huge volumes into the network, which would be, obviously much appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, any company being able to integrate single-sided, it's just such a big product. You could onboard so many users and make your own users happy. I mean, imagine if Celsius you use those that product instead of whatever the fuck they did.
I mean, I'll tell you guys a kind of an inside track story about that. We as a project, and in the communications that I've had with various teams and such, we've always struggled historically with, getting on the roadmap of Celsius and BlockFi and other kind of large institutions like that. And then something happened. I don't know what happened. Just like we got put on some kind of list somewhere. I don't know. I can't explain it. All of a sudden, almost at the same time, we got reached out to via like BlockFi and Celsius and Nexo and like a bunch of different things. And they were all like real bullish on THORChain very quickly and very suddenly. And they were going to list the token and they were going to add liquidity, and they were going to because each of those managed like billions of dollars of liquidity. And they were going to add a bunch of capital into the network, but they were hesitant to do so because they didn't want to take on that 50% Rune exposure, right? They have an obligation to their constituents to raise, to give them yield on their BTC or yield on their ETH or whatever. And of course, there's not really much places to actually generate BTC yield on. There's like GBTCs, basically like almost the only place you can do it. And so they were all of a sudden very interested in this. And so they didn't want to take on that Rune exposure. So we tried to talk to them about like doing a thing where the treasury was going to lend them a bunch of Rune to kind of remove that Rune exposure for them. And then they would give us the Rune back, later on, blah, 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 whatever. And we got these conversations, but then it became problematic because then they have to manage the Rune, right? And for a lot of those companies, they don't actually manage their own assets. They use something like Fireblocks, like an asset management company, to manage their assets, which became another kind of thing of problematic thing of like, well, Fireblocks doesn't actually support Rune right now. And why would they? It's too early for them probably anyway. So then we actually spent the time, which it only took me a few hours to do. Like it was actually quite simple, where I actually created a PR that you change THORChain, that you could create a THORChain that was like an asset management chain rather than just a DeFi thing. So it's THORChain. You can build your own THORChain minus the DeFi and just be like a big giant wallet that you and other people could manage as the administrators of this network. And so it ended up just being like a lot of like barriers in the way, right? In order to get all this large amount of capital from Nexo, from Celsius, from BlockFi, from these kind of characters. And so then that's what kind of triggered us to look back into this problem of like, how do we do single-sided yield? Which is when the idea came about POL, blah, 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 and all these things that kind of made it practical and possible to actually have, single-sided yield of BTC and ETH and whatnot, which solved the problem. Because now They could just provide the BDC, which there's already being supported by Fireblocks or their asset management company. They don't have to take on room exposure. They don't have to take any. They don't have to talk to the treasury, to us, and get a loan. Blah blah blah. Like all that kind of bullshit and hurdles that just were in the way just kind of get wiped away, almost instantaneously. And now they can just like, oh, we have BDC. Let's just put BDC in the network, and then we earn more BDC, and we've satisfied our customers. That was really kind of how this whole feature kind of came about, in a sense, right? And so now that we've actually finally got there, of course, Celsius and BlockFi and so forth are kind of like struggling because they had the whole explosion with UST and all that kind of stuff. But the functionality, the feature that we've added is quite significant, because we now know that there are large, institutions with literally billions of dollars of capital at their will that they want to produce BDC and other asset yield on, is now going to be readily available to them in a way that wasn't feasible or possible before. And so that's why I feel that this feature is going to be like a huge, game-changing, one of the most important features of the network even has in general, and how it's going to drive massive amount of yield, massive amount of TVL into the pools, and kind of be able to outpace a lot of other projects in some sense or form. So I'm super excited about it. And that's kind of a long-winded story that hopefully people find that fascinating or interested to how this whole feature came about.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, actually. And that's something you brought up a couple of weeks ago. I remember we were talking about the basically stripping away all the DeFi off of THORChain, and it's just it's a rotating TSS vault that basically is like some non-custodial solution for multi-chain asset management, which is like an interesting product on its own. Maybe not like the best implementation of it, but it's a very interesting product because anyone can basically custody assets on multiple different chains with other parties. Like it's a multi-sig for any asset on any chain, basically, that anyone can run. So I wonder, I don't know if you're still considering building out that as a product in itself, but it's an interesting solution, and definitely one for this new age of especially now that's been proven that it works with THORChain itself. It seems like a really good asset management solution.
Yeah, I think it actually is a big feature on itself. Obviously, it's separate from THORChain in the DeFi space and the general what we do here, but it took almost very little. I mean, this is kind of in a tribute to how well THORChain is designed as a code base. Is it took almost no changes to do that. It actually took me like a couple hours just to make a couple small things, and then away we go to create one of the most powerful and flexible asset management tools we've ever seen in the entire space. Now you can have a way of managing assets in a permissioned way within, Galaxy Digital, for example, could use it, and they run their own nodes, and they can sign transactions and be able to connect to, any and all of the chains that THORChain connects to without needing to worry about, the intricacies of each individual chain. And the fact that we run THORChain with, hundreds of millions of dollars of value kind of proves of its reliability, and security in a sense, right? And so I actually think that's going to be a big product unto itself in the future, but people won't even know it's there for probably another 4 or 5 years. It's just going to sit there in the background, and nobody, it's going to be a hidden feature for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden people will realize that institutions, not so much individuals, but institutions will probably, or maybe even Fireblocks, who the fuck knows, but we'll start using it, once they realize how it's there, how helpful it is.
Yeah, that's something that we're super bullish on at Nine Realms. Is probably one of the reasons why so many of us are excited about THORChain is just the whole rotating threshold signature vault schema is just it's pretty incredible, and in just how it makes things more trustless, and validators can come in and out of the network. And I'm also remembering that that's something that we talked a lot about at Consensus in that panel that we did. And the video is just out, so I just put a link up on the top to the video of the panel that we did at Consensus 2022 at the Cross-Chain Expo. That was there. So we talk a lot about the rotating threshold signature vaults, and why that's such a just a big change in the way that these custodial solutions can go. You either use a multi-sig or you use one of these rotating threshold signature vaults, or it's either a trusted system, or it's this kind of trustless system. So it's just like, well, it's just one of the biggest innovations that is just, it's not really even understood outside this space. It's probably barely understood by a lot of people in this space, but it's like one of the biggest innovations here for sure, and something that like we're super bullish on. So yeah,
I mean, yeah, threshold signature was a huge advancement in cryptography. I mean, it has its pros and it has its cons, but it's a game changer in many respects, right? And you could actually do, by the way, you can do threshold signatures without rotation, and basically you're creating like new points on the elliptical curve cryptography as people leave and new people enter. Which I think Dfinity is looking like. Dfinity, the decentralized computer thing. When I read their doc a while back, they said they intend to do it this way, where instead of rotating, you just, as new people come in, you just give them new keys. Which of course has a significant problem of like, well, if you keep on giving out new keys to the same wallet over and over and over again, then eventually people who leave can come together with enough of them and steal funds. So that's why the rotation is actually an important concept. I don't know why Definity's thinking about it.
Yeah, it seems a little strange.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's kind of like it's just like how it actually works. If people are curious about like how people talk about elliptical curve all the time, and it's how Bitcoin worked and all these other things. But what's fascinating is that how it works is that you're actually creating a line on a graph, right, on an X and Y graph, and either it's a straight line or a U shape or an S shape. And the number of signatures that are required to sign a transaction will create the shape itself, right? So in order to create a U shape, you need three dots, right, on that point. If you have three dots anywhere on that graph, anywhere at any point of that U shape, you can generate that U shape and therefore generate the private key and therefore like sign a transaction. And so the number of dots, you can have 3 dots on there, you can have 4 dots on there, you can have 100 dots on there, but 3 are only required, any 3 are any required to create that U shape to sign a transaction. And so effectively what they were doing is just creating more and more dots and more dots, but you only need 3 to sign anything. And that in a U-shaped elliptical curve, cryptographic perspective. So it's like, and in THORChain's case, it's not a U shape. It's actually a very, very complex shape because it's, 13, I think 12 or 13 minimum dots. So that would be a very complex shape. But anyways, just if you were curious to understand the cryptography behind all this stuff, because it is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I'd love to see that graph actually, because I only tangentially understand some of this stuff. So I would love to see some more info about how the TSS vaults actually work, like the cryptography of it.
Yeah, I don't even know what the shape is that the Asgard's vaults make with their cryptographic dots that they have. I actually don't even know what the shape even looks like, to be honest with you. It gets very complex in a way that my brain can't, think of it.
Yeah.
Once you get beyond 4 or 5 dots, my brain can no longer really accomplish the task.
Sweet. Anything else? We got AVAX launch, next chain, a single-sided yield. Those are all the big things, I think.
Yeah, the other thing is now that single-sided is completed in terms of the code base, and now it goes on to the vetting and testing period, I'm pushing my focus back onto order books and getting that finished hopefully soon. We'll see how fast it goes. But order books is my next kind of major thing that I'm working on towards working on for major features for THORChain. And then after that, I think we'll start having the conversation again in the community about THORFi and about whether or not we want to move forward with it or cancel it or fork it to a new chain that has this experimental features or keep it on the main chain. Who knows? That becomes a discussion and debate within the community of what we feel is the best way of moving forward.
Cool. So we'll let people up for some questions. There's someone that has been requesting for a while. Let's add them up. If anyone else has questions, you can just hit the button in the bottom left, or you can type in a comment under the thing on the right. All right, did it freeze or? Oh, there we go. Is this working? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go.
G-
GS.
Job.
What's up, man?
Now mic is on. All right, sir. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sir, I have a question about use cases of THORChain DEX. As you see right now, people are not taking initiative. It's use cases. So, sir, how much is gonna be useful in future of DeFi world?
I don't think I understood any of that.
Actually, sir, I want to say about the useful cases of THORChain DEX. People are not taking initiative in these days. So I want to know about what is the future usage of DeFi in DeFi world.
Right. So what is the utility of Thor? Like, what does THORChain do? Basically, I think Chad has a good handle on that.
What does THORChain do? And I think he also asked, what is the future of DeFi, which is very...
What is the useful cases of THORChain DEX in DeFi world?
So THORChain is currently it's the only protocol in the world that is able to do what it does, and that is the ability to transact value between from any chain to any chain. So it can transact value between Bitcoin to Ethereum to BNB to Doge to AVAX, Haven potentially, and that does it in a way that doesn't require any KYC or permission, and it has it can be integrated with any and all UIs and DEXs and that kind of stuff. So I think its value is that it's going to create more of a universal feel within crypto and make it so that everybody has access to whatever tokens they want whenever the hell they want it.
Yeah, so like if you go on so THORChain is a protocol that anyone can use to make their own cross-chain service. So if you go on a front end like THORSwap, you can see all the products that are offered by THORChain. It's swaps transacting value across chains. So you have Bitcoin, you want Ethereum, then you could swap it right there. And instead of signing up for a centralized exchange and using that, or the new aggregators, you can swap from an ERC20 token to an Avalanche ARC20 token. It's all about cross-chain swaps without bridges, and it includes Bitcoin, which is something that only THORChain does and can do at the moment.
Which is crazy to think about because we've been around for years. We first launched the earliest form of the network over 2 years ago, and we launched Bitcoin support over a year ago, and still to this day, we're the only ones that do what we do. And there are forks that people are working and been talking about forking for a while, but it's almost crazy to me that we're still the only players in the field.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just too hard. Like you need like a lot of people that are working, full time on this problem, right? And it's like THORChain has a huge advantage because the ecosystem and the community. Like it's not just the core protocol that's building something. It's there's a THORSwap team. There's every single other front end that uses THORChain, and there's people that are trying to build new products on top of Thor. Like there's a big community around it. So it's not just like someone developing a protocol. For no use case. There's people actually developing, their own front ends that use THORChain and that provide actual revenue. Because like a lot of these things that are in development, like who's going to join a team that doesn't have that doesn't have funding and isn't live yet? You're gonna spend your time creating a front end for something that isn't even around right now, or something that actually has like a product that works for cross-chain value. So.
Yeah, not only that, though, everybody who is trying to compete with THORChain is taking THORChain's design, making a couple minor tweaks to it, and maybe re-implementing it in a different language for no valuable reason whatsoever. But what's surprising to me is that THORChain's first white paper came out, I don't know how many years ago it was, and to this day there hasn't been a competing concept of an approach that has made any sense at all that people are willing to work on. So all the competitors I'm aware of, and there's quite a few that are in development, they're all forks of THORChain, either forks of the code itself or forks of the white paper, which is surprising because I remember when I was actually, in the early days when I was architecting and designing the system with other people in the core team, I always wondered to myself, is something we're missing? Is there a completely different approach to this that we haven't thought of, or being kind of fascinated by other ways of kind of approaching the same issue. And to this day, like I haven't seen anything that's different. That are they any completely different idea of approaching the issue as a whole, which is surprising me. I thought somebody would come up with something, but that's just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, understood very well. So one more question about that. This around 1 month ago, the CZ Binance tweet that do not trust a project who represents two or more tokens with the same project. Sir, you have represent the Rune and the Thor. So the complicated things which I have been taking, can you clear it?
Okay, so like kind of what I was saying before about THORSwap being a front end and THORChain being like a protocol. So THORChain is a protocol that anyone can interface with, and THORSwap with their token is called Thor. It's a separate project, but it uses THORChain to power its own services. So THORSwap is a DEX that uses THORChain to power its swap engine. Basically, it uses THORChain to make the swap, but THORChain is its own separate team and product. Like we in the community, like we work closely with them, but they're it's a separate entity that issues that Thor token. Well, Rune is the only token for THORChain itself. So Thor is just something by a different team. It's by a front end that uses THORChain. So it's not it is kind of confusing, but they're not really that similar.
Okay, it's a different THORSwap and THORChain is different. Okay.
Yep. Sweet. Thanks, man.
I was because I have been holding Rune since a year when it was at $10 and still holding.
Hey, R Wizard, what's up, man?
Hey, so based on the institutions that you guys are talking to, do you have, I'm not sure if this was covered, do you have an idea of how much liquidity they'd like to add?
No, they never insinuated how much. They kind of told us how much liquidity they have in general at a high level, but never told us what quantity they're willing to put into the system, at least not that I can recall. I didn't even bother asking that question. I just thought that'd be more too private of a question to ask in some sense. But a lot of those institutions aren't really around anymore, so it's they're not going to be doing it now. But other ones I'm sure will step up in their place.
Yeah, I mean, especially like this is the only DeFi product that offers single-sided Bitcoin yield. So we can see that there's quite a bit of appetite for that type of products, right? There's a lot of different institutions that are really interested in they have a lot of Bitcoin or ETH or whatever, and they want to yield on it with no exposure to anything else. So there's a lot of institutions that are very interested in these products, and they might dip a toe in the water first and then put more in later, but that's what we're hoping for, to get more of these types of institutions on board with THORChain and single-sided deals.
For sure. So I was reading the doc by THORChain, I think University or something. It's like one of the community members, and from what I understand, is it going to be possible for whoever to put as much liquidity as they want right away, or is that going to be a step-by-step process where there's a queue, and then depending on how much can be matched up, and then is that how it works, or is it you can just throw in as much as you want right away?
So there might be a cap based on how much protocol and liquidity that's being allowed. So it might start off where protocol and liquidity is limited, and there's only a certain amount that can be issued, just to make sure that there's no issues. So that way we can step it up over time. So protocol and liquidity is what allows synths to scale, and then if you have synths, you'll be able to just lock that in for yield. But the issue is just making sure that synths can be scaled safely. So that parameter will be walked up over time as it's proven safe, and we can use that to kind of throttle the single-sided yield a little bit at the beginning.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, Chad, have you thought about how much protocol and liquidity you'd like to see from the start? As a ballpark number of how much we want to see added, because right now there's only maybe a couple of pools that are near the synth cap, And protocol owned liquidity, it adds liquidity to the liquidity pools based on how much synth utilization is happening. So if there's a lot of synth utilization, the protocol starts adding in Rune and buying liquidity positions basically to increase that synth cap to scale the amount of synths that can be minted. So have you thought about how much you'd want to start with for protocol and liquidity?
My first thought was like a million Rune. The reserve has like I think 170 million Rune or something like this, isn't it? And it's 1 million of that to start. If we were to enable protocol on liquidity today, we probably wouldn't see a whole lot of activity with it. Probably not even a million Rune, to be honest with you, because there's just not enough demand center for synthetics, which was designed like that on purpose. But once we add the single side yield, that obviously creates a major demand center for synthetic assets. So that's obviously going to change that calculus quite significantly. But yeah, I'm thinking for starters, like a million Rune, and we'll keep our kind of thumb on it and kind of keep track of it and make sure it's all doing what it's doing correctly. And then we'll inch it up with time, I guess.
Yeah, that's the key. Starting small and just like scaling it up once it's like it's a stand the test of time. I mean that's kind of we've kind of like talked on the edge of that a little bit, but like that's really one of the most important things is just being able to be battle hardened in production, right? Like features live, but they don't just go all out from the start because that could be a recipe for failure. But scaling up slowly and make sure it's working and sustainable. Like that's the name of the game there.
Yeah, I think by keeping it small, we keep the risk small. So if something goes wrong, it's not so bad. And we can use the treasury funds to fix the problem if there's one that is potentially related, other than just a bug issue, a software bug. So keep it small and grow over time. Not too different than we did with ChaosNet. Anybody else have any questions? They want to come on stage and ask a question?
Yeah, we got the DeFi infestation. What's up, man?
Hello, guys. Can you listen to me?
Oh, geez. You step away from the mic a little bit, but you're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Now, I have a question.
Yeah. It sounds like you're screaming directly into my ear.
Oh, sorry. I have a question. The BTC is a synthetic. The BTC that we have to deposit on the single side staking is BTC. It's a synthetic type.
Yes, well, sort of. You can deposit regular old BTC, layer 1 BTC on the Bitcoin blockchain. The network itself will swap it into synthetic BTC for you on your behalf, and then hold it for you on your behalf and associated with your BC1 Bitcoin address. So you don't actually have to acquire synthetic BTC yourself. You can interact with this thing purely with a BC1 address. You don't have to have a Thor address or even hold buy Rune or any of these things. You can just do it purely through transactions and get your Bitcoin yield.
Okay, and you receive a yield in BTC or in the synthetic BTC, not Rune.
Yeah, you don't have to hold synthetic BTC. The network will handle it for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
I hope you have a quieter day today.
Jeez. I blew my ear out.
I know, right? It's all good.
Yeah, anyone else that wants to come up and ask a question or just say something? Let me see if there's anything in the chat section here.
Yeah.
So to be clear, another vote is needed to get XHV on StageNet or only eventually for mainnet. The answer to that is another vote is only needed to get it onto mainnet. So once the client is like, so there's a bunch of things that need to happen. So the client needs to get ready for StageNet, which will take quite a bit of time to get the Haven client ready for StageNet, and then it needs to be tested on StageNet thoroughly, and needs to sit on StageNet for a while, and then eventually the nodes will vote whether to move it onto mainnet or not, and a super majority, over 66%, need to adopt that proposal in order to have it move to live on mainnet. So no more voting needs to happen until it's already live on StageNet and like ready to make that last step or not. Like that's the final like go or no go for whether to make it live or not. And it's also not like a times thing. That's just once it's ready. If once that proposal ever reaches a supermajority, then it's it becomes it moves into that space where it goes live on mainnet. So
absolutely.
Oh, there we go. All right. Hey guys. So I've been with the THORChain ecosystem for a long time. Really love what they're building. Well, what you are building, I should say. It's just, it's so volatile as an asset. And I'm just wondering, aside from new product launch, are you seeing anything that people are extremely resistant to? Is it still just the relics of the exploits of yesteryear? Like, I would just love to know, like, what you think is creating such headwinds, because the tech is awesome.
Good question to ask. I guess you could ask 50 people and get different answers. But my answer is that I have the only time I get strife from people about THORChain or some hang up or whatever it is about the hacks that occurred over a year ago. To this day, I still get questions sometimes when I do like interviews or podcasts or whatever from people. And sometimes when I meet people and they're like, oh, and I explain that I work a part of the THORChain project, they're like, oh, I've heard of it. I heard they got hacked. And that's like the only thing they know about it. They don't even know what it is or what it does, but they know that it got hacked, which is kind of comical to me. But I think that's probably the biggest inhibitor to it. I think the other problem that we run into that is not really a problem, but is that like a lot of other projects have these very kind of flash in the pan firework type economic model where they just kind of like create a lot of hysteria and euphoria rather around their project just through kind of sketchy means, in my opinion. And so they tend to get more like kind of publicity and more kind of focus and these kind of things. And for people who are in crypto to make a quick buck or become Lambo people, they kind of are more attracted to those kind of projects because they kind of promise high yields and come over here, you get 100,000% APY and don't question it for some weird and dumb reason. THORChain is more of a fundamentals project. It's more taking a fundamentals look at how we can solve significant problems in the industry as a whole. And so because of that, it doesn't attract some people, which doesn't cause the hysteria that you see around other products like Ohm, or even like Terra had a lot of hysterics around it because of this 20% fixed rate, stuff that was unsustainable and economically insolvent. And so like they just constantly have other products kind of get their more attention. But I think that's going to change and shift over time. And I don't think we necessarily have to get much attention. I think the only thing we have to do really is just get integrations going. And then integrations itself will kind of just create a lot of trade volume and value to the network. And we don't have to become necessarily a household name. We'll just become integrated in everything that is a household name. And from that, abstract huge quantities of value and that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense. I think the message is keep spreading the love and the message and integrate and go. I mean, I love the branding. Go boring, right? That's awesome. But thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd be curious actually where Ryan thinks about that question, if he's got a different viewpoint.
Hey all, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry, what was the question there?
So you basically just saying, like, are you seeing anything in particular that's causing the reluctance of the masses to come to the project? Basically, like, how do we as a community help it get stickier?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just as a preface, I wanted to pop on to give an update on integrations, and this kind of dovetails right in there. So like THORChain is a complex beast, and making sure that folks understand how, or like what the capabilities are is always kind of a real communications challenge. So I think like the more, like, we've got some great communicators in the community, and taking the time to like break things down into small bites to be able to help folks understand, I think is all part of this process. And it's easy to like anchor on the fact that the hacks occurred, and folks aren't going to read more than the headline, and trying to make sure that we have comms out there that are talking about like the tech and why it's important, and what the capabilities are, I think is really huge. The other aspect of this is also just feature sets that are easier to comprehend, like the single-sided yield and those sorts of things. It's kind of meeting the user where we have like big UX wins, that reduce complexity and all that sort of stuff as well. So I think it's like, from the integration side, it's very much, how do we explain what THORChain's capabilities are and like what the payoff is for their users, has been an interesting learning experience in terms of like what ends up resonating with people. But does that kind of get at your question?
Yeah, absolutely. One more, if I could tack onto that. Will single-sided exist in UIs outside of like proprietary THORChain user interfaces?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no barrier here. If folks want to add it, it will drive volume and provide, a good service for your users. Like, no reason not to. I'm also excited to see what people compose on top of it. I think it would be really cool to have protocols that are leveraging the yields generated from single-sided in other things as well.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a good product for like centralized exchanges to utilize, because they have all this capital sitting on their, in their storage, whether it be Bitcoin or some other asset, and they can just offer to their users, which they already are to some extent, but then they're kind of like pushing it out into various DeFi protocols to get a yield on their Ethereum or Tether or whatever. And this just becomes like another mechanism for them to earn yield, except it allows you to earn yield on other assets that are not, part of an EVM, like Doge and Bitcoin and whatnot. And that's going to be, I think, quite valuable for a lot of these centralized exchanges and services like this, right? So I do expect this to become a well-utilized tool in the industry in general. But the main blocker, in my viewpoint, of getting it to that place is the bond. Is like how much capital can the network actually take and maintain economic security. And so this feature might be way more popular than what the actual security network can even handle. Which then becomes the question of like, how do we scale up the bond side of things? That becomes another topic of discussion and so forth and so on. But like, I think that's going to be probably the biggest challenge for this feature in some sense.
So going back a little bit to your other question, I think some of the problem is just the crypto media in general, and how crypto media is very like, I don't know. They only like to focus on certain events. Like they like to focus on, obviously exploits is a huge thing. So like when THORChain launched, for example, like it's not like there was some big, media fanfare from like, oh my God, look, cross-chain swaps. It's, oh no, look at Rune's price. It's, Rune is like $20 or whatever, like April 2021. So it's like, I think it's part of that, the like buzz that you're trying to talk about. It's so price related and related to certain events that are just big in the media, like how like mainstream media, it's like they like to talk about like violence and like specific topics that drive a lot of clicks and engagement. In crypto media, they like to talk about price, exploits, and then like what the people who are like in that like zeitgeist are saying and feeling. And usually that means like the people who are the heads of projects of highly priced projects that people have made a lot of money on. Like, any crypto news outlet, they're going to report anything that Vitalik says. They're going to report anything that like SBF says or like CZ says, I think that's a huge problem, and something that we've been working on a lot, just like with our like own media, and just like making things more like technology focused and like what's being built here rather than just like price, because there's so many different thought leaders that are here in the THORChain space, and just something that's not focused on enough. So I think it's a part of that, just a problem with the crypto media as a whole.
Yeah, I remember when multi-chain launched, and that was a significant moment in like crypto history, in my opinion, just because it was a significant shift of what was possible in the industry that wasn't even feasible before. And that day, I think it was the previous day, like Coinbase had their like IPO. And so the media was just like fixated on like Coinbase IPO and all these like this information about that, which in hindsight, like who gives a shit? Like that was just, another company going IPO and is boring as fuck. Right. Meanwhile, we launched as a community, we launched something that would fundamentally forever change the future of this entire industry. And it's been in a non-trivial way. And so I remember I was talking to, I think it was Eric Voorhees at the time, and we actually talked about this very topic about how everybody's focused on the Coinbase IPO. And Eric's just like, this is so much, THORChain launching is so much a larger thing than this Coinbase IPO. And everybody's so fixated that, in 10 years or whatever, when people look back on the times, like this is actually the event that we'll remember is THORChain's launch being a significant moment in crypto history, not so much, Brian Armstrong ringing the bell.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I totally forgot about that, but you're right. It was like the same day it was within the same week. It was like 1 or 2 days apart. And that was on the top of everybody's mind, like the, Coinbase. It's all about the big names and branding and just like name recognition, right? So like, I think that's a lot of the problem with the whole like, crypto media in general. And like something that like basically like the solution to that is just this like kind of grassroots like organization that we've kind of put together where we do this is how everyone does it now. We do our own Twitter spaces. We put out our own articles and we give like thoughtful pieces of insight to the media and, do our own podcasts and things like that's that's like the way of doing things, because the actual media itself, they're going to do whatever they want to do and whatever's in their realm of that's going to make them profit, right? Like that's their business. Is whoever pays them gets to the top of the media, and whichever products have the most eyes on them, aka the most people that have invested in them, they get the most media attention. That's just the way that it is. But like it doesn't discount any of like the innovation that's happening on THORChain and like what's being built in this cross-chain DeFi space, because I think it's hard to report on too, because like we move so quick and we're a decentralized organization. There's not one person that can say like, oh yeah, THORChain's doing this and we'll have these numbers up by Q4 and like where it's a very grassroots organized thing, so it's difficult to report it. Like there's no we don't get the attention that like Solana does, right? And I think there's reasons for that for sure.
I'd also add on like what's the perspective here? Like THORChain is like liquidity infrastructure, also, right? So in some respects, not getting a ton of media attention is okay as long as we're like continuing to grow these integrations in other domains, so that THORChain becomes ubiquitous in my mind. But just dovetailing into the kind of integrations update, just wanted to share with folks that over the past few months, Eridonis and other folks at Nine Realms have been leading the charge on integrations from various wallets to DEXs and other dApps, and it's been kind of a mixed response over that period of time. With the market conditions, a lot of teams were slow to get back to us, and I don't know, something in the water or the air over the past week, and everything has really started to come together. It's pretty awesome to see, and we're getting a ton of inbound questions around how to get integrated with THORChain, and just really pushing hard on all of that. And it's been awesome to just see the kind of new learnings in terms of stuff on the protocol that we can do to improve the integration process, stuff in documentation, and then also in Exchange.js as well. So yeah, super stoked. I'm having trouble sleeping. There's like so much coming. Really excited, and also just wanted to shout out to Eridonis for a ton of perseverance in getting us to this point.
By the way, with those integrations, the more integrations that happen, it has an exponential effect on the integrations, on more integrations coming downstream, right? So on day one, you're trying to explain to different random projects like, oh, this is what THORChain does, this is how it's valuable to you, and how it can add value to your project or your thing, which I've been a part of those conversations, and Orion has too, and Eridanus. Like, those are difficult conversations to have. Sometimes people get it instantly, like Shapeshift got it like almost instantly, and saw the value. It wasn't really very difficult to sell them in a sense. but other projects that just like have no idea what we're talking about Bitcoin. But we don't have Bitcoin, and like it just became almost silly conversations. It was shocking to see how many people just struggle to understand the idea of like layer one Bitcoin was a hard thing to understand for some reason. I don't know why, but it seemed like it was. But as we add more integrations into more DEXs and UIs and wallets and whatever else, it becomes more and more apparent the value that it provides. And it becomes more and more obvious to add it. And so like in the beginning, Orion and Iridanis and other people are going through a very arduous process, a very difficult process to get these things integrated with long dev cycles and competing features and things like this. But like fast forward, maybe a year from now, it's just going to become so obvious to add THORChain into so many DEXs and UIs that they probably won't even talk to Iridanis or Orion at all. And all of a sudden they're just going to integrate without us even being aware of it. And they'll just happen, in the background, which will just add more and more value to our network.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like over the past few months, I've been kind of holding a glass with ice in the bottom, like tapping it, trying to get some out. It's like, man, this is getting really, really frustrating. What else can we do to make this happen? And then all of a sudden, like all the ice is coming out all at once. So yeah, it's been really, really fun to see all that happen. And to Chad's point, yeah, this is all kind of compounding too, because it just ends up providing more and more utility for users across the whole space, and really, really gets to the point where THORChain is liquidity infrastructure behind everything.
Yeah, we built THORChain during the bear market, last bear market, and got it working, functioning, get the whole thing working. This bear market will primarily focus on integrations and expanding out. We have some big features as well. Obviously, people would know that, but most of this bear market will probably be spent, doing integrations and such, so that when the bull market starts again, we're going to be, have a multiplier on the product, just because we're already interfaced with so many valuable UIs and DEXs that as they grow exponentially in their respective right, it'll create exponential value to THORChain in a way that's just going to cause it to grow quite significantly during the next bull. So it makes me super bullish. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, man, the integrations front is huge area, and something that there's only a couple of centralized companies that are doing this currently. And THORChain definitely has the power to disrupt that whole model, especially with the affiliate fees and being able to basically just create more revenue for these wallets and DEXs. It's gonna be great. The more integrations we see, it's just gonna add more integrations, and we get that integration avalanche, as Orion pointed out. Sweet, guys. Anything else? Anyone else want to come up? Otherwise, we can wrap up for today.
I know Cam wants to come up. Cam from Delphi Digital, you're welcome to come up if you want anything you want to say.
Hey guys.
Yo, Keiko.
Hey man. I just wondered about the BNB beacon chain upgrade. Where are we at with that? With our BEP2 assets on THORChain? Over.
Yeah. So it kind of snuck up on us a little bit. We didn't know that update was coming until pretty late. I think largely because the repo where you kind of monitor that stuff changed, and they moved the place where they notify the public about the daemon changes to a different location, which we didn't know, and so our bots missed it. But yeah, it happened already. It happened last night. It seemed like it actually went pretty smoothly, and I don't think we even necessarily needed to upgrade the Binance Chain daemon. I think it still worked either way, so it's kind of a non-issue.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks, Chad, for the call out. I just landed, I was on a flight and just landed and saw the space and participated, so I missed all of it. So unfortunately, I won't be able to speak to what you guys discussed. But I was just at the Stanford Science of Blockchain conference, and there were pretty much the whole were there. Vitalik, Zaki, name anyone pretty much. And the most spoken topic of the conference was MEV and how that will affect user experience post merge on Ethereum. and it's like very surprising to me that like the MEV solution that THORChain like kind of decided a few years back, which is like making ordering part of the consensus, is like simply brilliant. The topic seems like very complicated, and we're yet to see like implications of it really after like after Ethereum like merges. So yeah, it just like made me once again realize that like it was a very clever decision from the get-go for THORChain.
Yeah, this is one of the comical things about that question that I forget the guy's name, Garmin, or what the guy's name was before, is that like all of these issues that other AMMs are struggling with, like MEV, for example, MEV, like we've solved a long fucking time ago. It just makes me feel like we're just like years ahead of everybody else in so many respects, not just MEV, but like in other ways as well in terms of our capital efficiency.
Like to be completely fair, I think like there's an advantage to being like application specific. You can just like bake all the ordering into state machine. Like the problem is like much harder on the general purpose chain. However, like it's still like fascinating that it has been like shipped and like done and solved like years ago.
Yeah, but that's also why it was in part why it was selected to do an app specific chain, because I think we recognized that doing this on a generic chain was completely impractical, improbable, and highly problematic. And it stopped us from accomplishing so many goals. Like we wanted to solve the MEV problem, we wanted to solve cross chain, we wanted to solve a bunch of different things: efficiency, scalability, performance. None of these things could really be solved in a practical way. Even the practical in L2 as well. So I think we recognized early on from a first principles perspective why generic chains are problematic for AMMs. Well, at least the type of AMM that we wanted to work on or build up, the type of problem we wanted to solve. And we kind of approached it and did what we did. And I think we ended up doing something quite innovative and quite novel that other people haven't really quite caught up to yet.
Sweet, guys. I think we can call it here.
All right, brother. Good chat with you.
Sweet, Chad. Thanks for everyone coming up. Yeah. Con, Orion, everybody else that.
Take care, all.
See ya.